Mayor Martin, we have the meeting live streaming, so you can start at any time that you're ready.
Mayor Martin, you're muted.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Appreciated that. We're already on 6.8 now, so I will start again. I'd like to call to order the February 14th, 2022 regular meeting of Council to order at 6:30 p.m. And I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the shared traditional lands of the Lekwungen speaking people. We are still attending electronically right now, just with COVID measures. So I will do attendance. And so I will ask all of council to please unmute and just let me know that you're here. Councillor Baxter.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi.
I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Logan.
I'm here, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
I'm here.
Thank you. And Councillor Jansen.
Why am I last?
Because you're last on my screen. You showed up last, I guess. Maybe that's why I showed up that way. Thank you. Looking for the approval of the agenda, that the near-term and long-term agendas be received, and the agenda of the regular council meeting for February 14th be adopted as presented. Are there any objections to the approval of the agenda and receipt of the near and long-term agendas? Seeing none, I will state that it is approved by unanimous consent. Moving on to Mayor's message. Nothing to say this evening except happy Valentine's Day from the sexiest town in Canada. And that's all I have to say for that. Moving on. Yes.
Worship, I think
Please,
you're being too modest here, sir. You forgot to mention that you were elected vice chair of the GVLRA.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, I was elected to, yes, thank you. I was elected to that. And I was also, might as well, since you brought that up, I was also elected to chair TTAC, which is our treaty advisory committee. So we'll be working on that as well.
We should probably also acknowledge Councillor Day. I believe she stepped down after a whole bunch of years as the chair of the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Society. And luckily, I think she's staying on as vice chair. Have I got that about right, Councillor Day?
No, I'm staying on as the past chair. The new vice chair is the citizen rep from View Royal, Adam Flint. So we have a new executive. Hopefully the committee will be gentle with them and we'll get lots done.
Okay, well, congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. I'm moving on to adoption and receipt of minutes. The first that I have is the regular council meeting minutes for January 24th. Are there any errors, omissions, discussion? If not, then I will state that it is approved by unanimous consent. Moving on to receipt, we will need to receive two Minutes, one is the Waterfront Coastal Process Committee meeting minutes of October 28th and the Emergency Planning Committee meeting minutes from November 16th. Are there any comments, issues, concerns? If not, I will state that they are approved by unanimous consent. Which moves us on to public participation. I have something to read. Unfortunately, it's a little long, but I will just get through it, hopefully. During public participation, members of the public will be provided an opportunity to present concerns or to ask questions of council. Comments pertaining to the following matters that have been subject to a public hearing are prohibited at the meeting. Bylaw number 1898, cannabis retail at 1905 Souk Road. Bylaw number 1908, CD31, this is 3554 Ryder Heshdall Way. And bylaw number 1912, CD32, 791 Drummond Way. As we have many people registered to speak this evening, I would like to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to address council. Public participation is an opportunity to present any concerns or to ask questions. Under the authority of the council procedural bylaw number 1890, 20 minutes is allocated for public participation. In a moment, I would like to propose a motion that we extend public participation this evening to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to speak. As outlined in our recently passed council procedural bylaw, each speaker will be entitled to speak up to 2 minutes per person. You are also, the public is also encouraged to submit comments to corporateservices@colwood.ca, and council will be able to read them and read your full comments. We ask the public that you please provide your name and street address to confirm residency or property ownership. Colwood residents and or property owners will be provided the first opportunity to speak. Staff are aware of that and have actually ordered the speaking list to reflect that. Debate with or by any members or staff is not permitted. The following conducts will not be accommodated: outbursts or criticisms aimed at individuals or groups, rude or offensive language or gestures, disturbing display of conduct of your business, questioning the motives of any person, expressing a negative opinion about the personality or character of any person, speaking disrespectfully about or acting aggressively towards any person. When your allocated time is up, we will ask that you be courteous such that the next person has a fair opportunity to speak. I ask that you please respect other speakers and remain within the 2-minute time frame. I do wish to just comment on that just a little further. My style of chairing to this point has been to allow people to go up to their time period and then for me to identify that your time is up, but to give you an opportunity to have some closing remarks. Unfortunately, a few people went a little longer than just trying to conclude their remarks, and I received several correspondence from people saying that I was being unfair, that I was giving preferential treatment to some individuals and not others. And so with that, I'm going to have to be very strict. When the 2 minutes is up, you are done. The public will not be able to speak. I don't like it. It feels rude to me, but it seems like it's the only way to be fair to all. And so I am going to be doing that this evening. And with that, I will ask staff to please introduce the first staff member. And just to be clear, what I will do for every individual is most times people will ask to check if we can hear you. I will not start the timer. If you ask that question, I will start the timer as soon as you begin speaking about the issue that you wish to speak about this evening. So with that, staff, please introduce first public.
Okay, our first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, my apologies. I need to stop. We have, as far as I know, we have 13 people registered to speak at 2 minutes apiece. That would take us 26 minutes. So I do need a motion, and I would like to offer that right now, a motion to extend public participation this evening so that everyone has an opportunity. May I have a mover and seconder to that, please? Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Jansen. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition, Councillor Baxter, could you just drop your hand?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm assuming you're not voting against it. So great. So we do have an extension, so we will extend it so everybody has an opportunity to speak. Seth, Please introduce the first person.
Okay, our first person is Carol Brown from Cualta Crescent. Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Yes, I can be heard.
Yes, you can.
Mayor and Council, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. I'm here once again to represent the group Friends of Havenwood Park. We understand that your decision of accepting or rejecting this rezoning application is complicated and involves the consideration of many factors. We thank you for the thoughtful process that you are undertaking. Yes, the current single-family home zoning could see the developer cut trees right up to the park boundaries. This is truly unfortunate and not in keeping with environmental best practices. However, the effect of a 4-tower, 6-story development with up to 3 below-ground parking levels within meters of the park is even more of a concern to the health of the park. A move from 22 single-family homes to 280 apartment units with commercial businesses could not help but bring noise and congestion with the coming and going of vehicles from residences and commercial businesses. Increased human activity will likely cause disturbances to the park's natural biodiversity and ecosystems. The current zoning bylaws may not be perfect and may justifiably be considered outdated, as many Colwood residents feel it is no longer acceptable to cut down all of the trees on building lots or to blast all rocky outcroppings to level ground. For many Colwood residents, this kind of development does not reflect their desire to build differently in a time of concern for the environment. Under both the current zoning and the proposed rezoning, tall trees within the park next to the development are slated for possible cutting. As you know, the city has a legal obligation to work with the other holders of the covenant on Havenwood Park in regards to protection of the trees. The prospect of shortening or cutting down almost all tall trees in Area 2 of the park is of great concern to friends of...
My apologies. That is your 2 minutes. I know it goes very quickly. What I would encourage you to do is to take the, it sounds like you have some written correspondence, and I would really encourage you to send those to corporateservices@colwood.ca, and then that would be sent to all of council so that we could read all your remarks. Thank you. I will go to our next caller.
Our next caller is Kim Jordison from Hotwood Place. Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. For the minutes, my name is Kim Jordison and I live at 3429 Hopwood Place. I attended the December 13th council meeting at City Hall, in which consultant Dean Strongitharm provided a PowerPoint presentation on the development proposed for 3460-3461 VMP. In this presentation on page 18, it stated, as did Mr. Strongitharm verbally, that this development was to provide 280 rental apartment units that are in high need. Councillor Jansen asked about a specific a Section 219 rental agreement and was told that this would be placed on title. At this meeting, the mayor and councillors that voted this development move forward to the bylaw stage did so, stating that the need for rentals was part of their decision-making process. The mayor even stated that there's a significant population that will never have money for a down payment and that Colwood is going to need to provide a rental stock. However, at the December 13th meeting, there was nothing legal or binding to state that these were indeed going to be rentals, when in fact they were listed as condos. This vote shouldn't have proceeded without the facts. On January 10th, Carol Brown, representing Friends of Havenwood, called in to state that the presentation provided on December 13th was incorrect and that there has been no engagement or correspondence between the developers and the Friends of Havenwood regarding their concerns about the park. There is a covenant on Havenwood Park that requires the agreement of all parties in the management of the land, yet you don't have that yet. How can this development keep proceeding without such important requirements being met? The mayor stated this park needs to be safe and needs to thrive, yet Friends of Havenwood, HAT, and TLC are telling you that there are concerns. But yet it appears their concerns fall on deaf ears. Imagine my surprise when I reviewed the agenda package for this evening's meeting.
Again, I
Only 100
apologize,
of
but that was our 2
280
minutes. I do apologize, but it is our 2 minutes. I would encourage you to please send your written correspondence to corporateservices@colwood.ca, and council will be able to read all your responses. Staff, our next caller, please.
Okay, so our next caller is Mike Hallmark from Delora Drive. Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Hello?
Yes,
okay, wonderful.
we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you again for the opportunity to talk. I do appreciate it. I'm speaking in favor of BC Alta development, and I'd just like to talk about the lack of housing in our community, because I really see it on a daily basis. There's huge lineups and considerable need for homes in all of Greater Victoria. There's an opportunity for our community to grow, and that's now. Currently, people are bidding up rentals in our community, not just homes for sale, but renters out there are actually bidding up what if that rental's $1,800, they'll bid it up to $2,100, $2,200, and I've never seen that in 18 years. There's desperation out there for these people because they don't have a home to reside in. To me, as a resident, the character and reputation means everything when someone is planning to build in the community I live in. The company wants to build to enhance our community, and not knowing or caring about the builder and what they bring to the table is a mistake. As a resident, it does matter if the builder is going to follow through with the future vision of our community, or they're just planning on maximizing their dollar. BC Alta is a business I've personally done considerable research on. I've seen communities that they've built up in Calgary, and I can say from firsthand knowledge that their intention is to build quality and not compromise on the dollar to see the vision come to fruition. You can see already what they've accomplished with the builds in Colwood. I've dealt with exceptional builders and not so exceptional builders over the past 18 years, and I can say without compunction that this family tops all of them without competition. Speaking in direct regards to Havenwood Park, they're offering 57% green space, which is 22.5% extra park space. So to me, that's a huge benefit for who's living near the park. Previous approved 21 home development is considerably less green space. So because of BC Alta, I live in the first solar power community around here. It's the first of its kind in Greater Victoria for a reason. Other builders wouldn't incur this expense. It's not cost effective when you're trying to build to be environmentally conscious by putting up.
I do apologize, but that is your 2 minutes.
Okay.
I would encourage you to please, again, send your remarks to corporateservices@colwood.ca. Staff, next caller, please.
Our next caller is Margaret Abercrombie Hutchin from Hopwood Place. Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yeah,
okay.
we can. There you go.
Oh, good. Okay. I guess I better start quickly here. Mayor Martin, councillors, my name is Marg Abercrombie Hutchin, and I reside at 3433 Hopwood Place. My comments are in regards to the development at 3460 and 3461 Veterans Memorial Parkway. I'd like to first talk about transportation. The city states prior to issuing a building permit, the developer shall at his sole expense and responsibility to 1, design and construct a 5-lane cross-section of the VMP that will accommodate bus stops on each side. 2, that the developer is responsible to apply for and obtain all the necessary municipal, provincial, federal approvals and permits necessary to construct the required frontage improvements. I am concerned with 1, the additional access and egress from this development. The crosswalk positioning is just around the bend in the road, creating a blind spot. Currently, drivers lack attention to the crosswalk. What will happen with an increase of road traffic and an increase of pedestrian traffic, I think will be a real concern. The increase of traffic in general is due to the increase in development in Colwood South. I did listen to your council meeting of January 24th, and I realized that the city is addressing this issue. The staff, however, must readdress this proposal as there are efficiency and safety concerns as it stands. The last thing I'd like to talk about is Section 219. If council approves this rezoning, a detailed management plan is to be prepared at the cost of the developer and approved by council following the adoption of the rezoning. Land alteration and review processes will include the City of Langford, TLC, and HAT as holders of the Havenwood Park Covenant. This requirement is proposed to be secure in the development agreement. Let's remind everybody that anything affecting Havenwood Park must be approved by HAT and the TLC, and they did not recommend this development in February and September of last year. The purpose of the covenant is to preserve the natural features of the park. Removal of trees in Havenwood Park is prohibited under the covenant. The owner shall grant
Again, I apologize.
Covenant.
I'm sorry, 2 minutes goes way too fast for us. But thank you for your comments. And I would, again, encourage you to please share them in writing to council. Staff, next caller, please.
Our next caller is John Briggs from Delora Drive. Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Honorable Mayor, councillors, I have a news flash. The population of British Columbia is at 5 million people and growing. Item number 7.3 on the agenda tonight addresses a small contribution to the future housing in our area. City Council has given conditional approval to this project, and it has met and exceeded all scrutiny. Council has been progressive and realized there is demand, and this project will make a small contribution to the supply. We're looking for a positive outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff, I will look to the next caller then, please.
Our next caller is Brian Semenko from Hopwood Place. Could you please press *6 to unmute yourself?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Brian Semenko, I live at Hopwood Place, and I'm opposed to this council approving construction of 6-story condo buildings next to Havenwood Park. The mayor and 3 other council members have promoted this development as much-needed rental apartments that will be affordable for future citizens of Colwood. None of this is true. Most of this development will be condos, and the rentals are not part of an affordable housing program. Condos and apartments in buildings with fancy curved facades and underground parking located beside a woodland park will not be inexpensive. The developers managed to negotiate the requirement for rentals down 2/3. What else is the Colwood staff going to give away? The requirement for adequate parking? The green space buffers? The developer's own reports state that once the land is cleared for construction, the tall trees on the perimeter will be unstable and in danger of falling. His reports recommend that these unstable trees around the building site be cut down. In addition, his own reports clearly states that trees in Havenwood Park adjacent to this newly cleared area will also become unstable and the park trees should be removed. The development is on privately owned land and the developer should be allowed to build on it. However, when the construction impacts the park, this should not be blatantly ignored. Before construction has even started, the requirement to cut down park trees is part of the plan. Every time this issue has been brought forward to staff and council, it has been ignored. This development is a Pandora's box of future problems that the Colwood staff does not have the time or the resources to monitor. Trusting the developer to do the right thing is naive. This cross your fingers and hope for the best type of management is irresponsible. Good night.
Thank you. Staff, we can go to the next call, please.
Okay, our next person is Chris Wazorek. I hope I said your name correctly, from Burnside Road East. Please press *6.
We cannot hear you right now if you are attempting to speak. You'll need to hit *6 again. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Apologies about that. Mayor, Council, good evening. Thank you for the time to speak. My name is Chris Weiserick, and I work as the Land Protection Coordinator for Habitat Acquisition Trust. Like many of the commenters tonight, I wanted to speak briefly about Havenwood Park. As you already know and have been reminded tonight, HAT and the Land Conservancy of BC co-hold a covenant on Havenwood Park that to a certain extent dictates what can and can't be done in the park. For example, under this covenant, the city has an obligation to not remove trees from the covenant area, to maintain biodiversity and to protect natural features, as you've heard. And as per the covenant as well, TLC and HAT, the two covenant holders, need to be fully involved in any sort of decision that may impact the covenant or more specifically, the restrictions imposed by the covenant. Now I understand, and I'm certainly hearing on this call as well tonight, that there's been quite a lot of broader conversations in your community about this, and so I had shown up to this public participation with the intent of just reminding you about the covenant. Clearly that's already been done on behalf of me, but I also just wanted to take this opportunity to clarify that HAT as an organization and co-covenant holder has not agreed yet to any potential changes or to any potential impacts to the covenant area at this time. Let me just close for now by saying that we certainly at HAT appreciate all the hard work and our good relationship with city staff over the years and into the present that has gone into protecting this park and making it a beautiful natural area for so many Colwood residents, as we do appreciate as well the many volunteers, including the Friends of Havenwood Park, who continue to work at having the same objective. And I'll just sign off tonight by again reiterating that certainly moving forward, HAT's expectation is that the terms of the covenant will continue to be followed, as we know they always have been, and that HAT will be fully involved in any decisions as is required by the covenant. Thank you very much for the time to contribute tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Staff, next caller, please.
Okay, our next caller is Mac Carson. Can you please state your address and press *6 to unmute yourself?
Hello, I live in Victoria, but I'm just speaking on behalf of BC Alta in support of the project as a professional.
Okay, go ahead. What we can do is,
okay?
Staff will, sorry, I'm going to stop the timer. Just staff, I do understand if you don't want to share your address because we are live streaming, but staff will reach out to you just to get your address for the public record.
Perfect. Okay.
Great.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Matt Carson, and I'm speaking in favor of BC Alta's proposed development on VMP. The two primary reasons I'd like to highlight are the need for supply of rental units across our region. Specifically, rentals.ca noted that there was a 20% year-over-year increase in rental listing prices across the region, which is the greatest increase in any market in Canada that they track, higher than that of both Toronto and Vancouver. And many property management groups across the region estimate that their portfolios are below 0.5% vacancy. I think it's simple. You can go and ask any individuals you know who might rent in this region how much of a challenge it can be to find a place to rent and live. Your only chance in many cases is to know someone, which isn't great for people moving to our region. And really, these are the people that are kind of supporting the middle class and lower class and the blue collar workers of our region that support the economy of the city and into the future. The best solution is more supply. And from a net environmental impact standpoint, I can understand why no one likes to see greenfield development of real estate, me least of all as a pragmatic environmentalist. I do believe that there are some important environmental considerations around the site. First of all, the group has decided to protect 58% of the overall site as park space, and they've intended to utilize solar systems on the project, which they've clearly demonstrated delivering on previous development phases. I'm also a firm believer that density is the key to minimizing our net environmental impact in the long term in our cities. The environmental impact of 280 units or 400 or 500 individuals to be housed on a dense site such as this is much lower than in comparison to raising a mountainside for another low density development, or, just to basically spread those people out in the countryside. So I think the impact is lower from a construction standpoint and long-term carbon impact.
Thank you for your comments.
We should give this some consideration.
Sorry, thank you. And again, if you have further comments, please, you can provide them in writing at corporateservices@colwood.ca. Staff, could we please go to the next caller?
Okay, our next caller, I'm gonna struggle pronouncing your name, but the last name is, I think, Erlimaz. Can you please press *6 to unmute yourself? I also didn't get your address.
I think it is me, Begum Aryılmaz.
Okay.
I live in, Royal Bay area, 451 Regency Place. Actually, I'm totally by chance here. I'm looking for investment opportunities for my daughters for the future. And I'm an architect and landscape architect, and I have been working over 20 years in that kind of project. I just wanted to say that after hearing all the comments, first of all, in a construction approach, I can see the very, consciously decisions about the construction site, but I'm a landscape architect mainly, and I can see the harmony in the landscape and the topography. And when I'm trying to choose a project for my daughters, I try to choose a area that they can live in a community. And if you could read the site plan here, we can see a huge investment and thoughts in the scenario site. And when this project is finished, I believe that there will be a community created, and it is a really huge, need to get a condo for the younger generations because the houses are very expensive. And I think that kind of projects would be an incredible help for the future generations. And I really want to think about it. I don't know the company, but I really want to think about it. And I will certainly search more about the details. How can I be a part of that project? I like the site plan really, really much.
Thank you. Thank you for your call. Staff, I believe, is it one more caller?
We have 3 more callers.
Three more. Okay, thank you.
We have Dean Strongenthorn. Can you please press *6 to unmute yourself?
Dean, we're not able to hear you if you are speaking. If you can please hit *6.
We could go to the next person and give Dean a couple of minutes.
Sure.
Our next person is Zoe Livia. Can you please press *6 to unmute yourself?
Hello, thank you for the time, everyone. All right, so although I love the parks and I'm a big fan of trees and nature, I do know that there is a huge demand for housing. In the next 2 to 5 years, StatsCan is expecting another 25,000 people to move to the island. Our Colwood Housing Needs Report assessment shows in 6 years, we are going to need 2,640 homes for people. 1,031 of those are apartments, 710 single-family homes, 790 townhomes. Our rental rate is at 0. Seniors on the wait list for housing right now in Colwood as of 2021 are 31 people waiting and 43 families on a wait list for housing. Although BC Alta and other developers are not responsible to fulfill our entire need of housing, we do have an obligation to supply housing for our community. And we do live on an island. It is bedrock. It requires blasting and moving beautiful trees and nature, which I have a heart for. However, we have to make people a priority. Now, when I consider that and consider if we have to build in housing for people, we then must choose the best company to do that. And when I look at the history of BC Alta, they've been in business since 1980. That's like many, many years with an exceptional track record. The people in the meetings that show up that live in any of the product in Colwood are all very impressed, and I have not heard a single complaint mentioned. So the quality of the properties that they build is superior. I have heard many complaints from other developers, and so I just believe that if this company is willing to step forward and try to meet the needs of the community and answer to suggestions around the park so that we can have the best product moving forward, I think this is the best hope for us. I would rather development be in their hands than some of our less careful builders with inferior products and vision for the community. I think they align beautifully.
I'm afraid I have to interrupt you, Zoe. Zoe, could we also, staff were just asking me, could we just get your street? I don't need the house number, but just the street that you live on. Zoe, did I lose you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I think I lost her. Staff, you have a phone number, so hopefully you can call her and track her down.
All right,
so
our next speaker is, we'll try Dean Strong and Tharm again. Let's see. Are you there, Dean? Okay, let's go to Ben Mycroft. He is the last person that I have on my list.
Yes, thank you, Mercy. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's Ben Mycroft representing Gablecraft Homes at 365 Latoria Boulevard. I'm just here tonight to address briefly item number 6.5, development cost charge roads, and specifically the third and fourth portion of the consideration. Just to further reinforce my comments from last week, Gablecraft Homes and Seacliff Properties, working together with our design engineers and city staff, have now completed the design, are in the midst of a tendering process, and we are prepared to start construction on or about March 22nd during spring break for the Matrosen and Latoria signalized intersection, laning improvements, and the bus exchange on Latoria Boulevard. And that approval of the agenda item tonight, 6.5, will ensure that we can proceed to complete that work by late summer of this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. And I guess we'll go back to try Dean one last time.
I believe that he has fallen off now, so he's not in the group here.
So Dean, if you are listening, our apologies that we weren't able to hear you, but again, I would encourage you to please send your written submissions to corporateservices@colwood.ca, and all of council will be able to see your comments. And just confirming, staff, I can move on to the next agenda item. We have no one else?
We have no one else.
Great, thank you. So we're going to move on to 6.1. This is the Performing Arts Center next steps. This is a recommendation from the February 7th Committee of the Whole meeting. May I get a mover and seconder, please? Oh, excuse me. Go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Baxter.
I have to step out as my wife is president of the association.
Thank you. So yeah, just confirming that Councillor Baxter has declared a conflict of interest. The motion has been moved by Councillor Jansen. Do I have a seconder? I will second it just to move this forward. So seconded by Mayor Martin. Discussion. Councillor Jansen, anything? No? Okay. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I would like to make an amendment to the second part of the motion.
Okay.
And what I'd like to do here, just to certainly address my concern, the $30,000, I think what has to happen here, and I think it's part of our fiduciary duties here. It's a lot of money, and I certainly would like to see deliverables. So what do we get?
Sorry, Councillor Kobayashi, could we have your motion first, and then
Okay,
I'll have you argue it out after.
So my motion is that the allocation be subject to the preparation of deliverables and a roadmap, so that we understand what we're approving for the $30,000. So
I'm sorry, I'm just going to hold on. Sorry, Councillor Kobayashi, I want to do this right for us. So staff, do you have the ability to put up Councillor Kobayashi's amendment on screen? I realize he may not have provided it ahead of time, but I'm hoping that you could at least type it in so that we can all see it.
Okay, can you just give me one moment here?
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, I'm gonna wait, Councillor Kobayashi, just so that we get it written properly
Sure,
out for you.
And now I've got to share my screen. Just a moment, sorry. Okay.
Okay, so could we, Ms. Irving, could we please just maybe type in red what Councillor Kobayashi would like the second paragraph to read, so that we can see what's proposed? Perfect. No, hey, sorry, down in the amendment was fine. Okay, sure, we'll leave it there. Councillor Kobayashi, is that kind of what you're looking for, or are you looking? I guess there's more, so I will allow you to continue with your motion.
Yeah, the context is right. Is the wording right? Be allocated subject to the preparation of roadmap and deliverables. Let's see.
Sorry, staff. So we need after the subject for the preparation of the roadmap and deliverables. Did you say,
Yes,
Councillor Kobayashi?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we basically will want to know how we're going to get to A to Z right now, and because we have no idea. So just to put some context around this right now, we were
sorry. Just before you do that, I want to get the motion, and then I want to get a seconder, and then I will come back to you and let you argue it out.
Allocated subject to the preparation of the deliverables and a roadmap. Yeah, subject to the preparation of this, subject to the preparation of deliverables and a roadmap. So here's what we are approving. Yeah, I guess that captures it.
Okay.
It just be subject. Take that extra B out of there, Amanda. Be allocated subject to. Yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Earl has his hand up. Mr.
Earl. Thank you, Your Worship. Just some possible possible wording that might achieve the same intent. At the end of the sentence of this paragraph, the sentence ending performing arts facility period, add a new sentence, with release of the funding subject to council approving a terms of reference, period.
And I'm sorry, are you, Mr. Earl, are you suggesting, again, could staff please put that in red when you have a moment, so that we know that that's there? And Mr. Earl, are you suggesting that we drop the first subject to the preparation of the deliverables, or both? Are you saying both should be in there?
The suggested wording that I'm providing is alternate to the wording that Councillor Kobayashi was providing. It's again, I'm trying to read the intent of the motion live.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'll go back to Councillor Kobayashi. Councillor Kobayashi, which would you prefer?
Just a question through the chair to Mr. Earl. Does the terms of reference normally have deliverables in it, though? It doesn't, does it? It's generally who's doing what and what the responsibilities are, but it's not a project plan, right? It's you don't have deliverables normally in a terms of reference. So I just want to make sure it's crystal clear. Yeah, it's both. In actual fact, I had that wording terms of reference before, but you know what I was more interested in understanding what we're getting for our $30,000 more than what a terms of reference. So just a question for you, Mr. Earl.
Your Worship.
Yes, please.
I guess my suggested wording is with release of the funding subject to council approving a terms of reference would give council the ability to collectively determine whether or not the terms of reference met your expectations in terms of if they contained the right scale of deliverable.
Okay, I'm fine with that, Your Worship.
Okay, great. So we're going to go with we're going to delete that off. So Councillor Kobayashi has moved an amendment which includes what is in red. Do I have a seconder to that amendment, please? And I'm sorry, staff, I can't see hands. So could somebody, if there is a seconder, they could verbalize it, please, because I can't see. Thank you, Councillor Day. Thank you. Councillor Day has seconded it. I will drop everybody's hands just for a moment. My apologies. I just want to clear everybody, and then I will go to discussion. And please put up your hands if you wish to discuss. And right now we are just on the amendment. So we're just discussing the amendment. Is there any discussion? Councillor Parkinson.
I'll be quick, Your Worship, but I do support this amendment. I think it tidies up what's actually happening here and gives us the kind of control we should have before we spend that kind of our taxpayers' money. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Kobayashi, go ahead.
I don't have anything more to add.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, then I'm going to call the question on the amendment. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. That brings us back to the main motion. Discussion on the main motion. Any other? Hearing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Please raise your virtual hand. Nobody opposes. The motion passes. Councillor Baxter, could you please come back? Thank you. Moving on to 6.2. This is the Community Amenity Contribution Policy, the interim update consideration. This is a recommendation from the February 7th Committee of the Whole meeting. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Oh, Councillor Kobayashi moves, Councillor Parkinson seconds. Discussion, Councillor Kobayashi, do you have anything? Nope, you're good. Councillor Parkinson, you're good?
The only thing I might ask at this point is, this being an interim update, how long we think it'll take to get a not interim update. I think the development industry, every time things are a little unclear or uncertain, they like certainty. So it'd be nice to have the final update at some point. Do we have an estimate of time for that?
Mr. Earl or Mr. Borhill?
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff will endeavor to complete the comprehensive review before the end of this year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Earl?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to provide some clarity. There's an item later on the agenda, item 7.3, and I just wanted council to be aware that item 7.3, which is a first and second reading of 3460 and 3461 Veterans Memorial Parkway, was negotiated with staff under the traditional policy and would not be affected by this motion were it to pass this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Earl. Councillor Jansen.
That's on point to my question. Thank you. I'm sure there are some underway that will get kind of caught up in some of the nuances of this as we move forward with the new policy. But my question is, it would be my preference that we invite those developers underway to get on board with the spirit of the new policy, because it is reflective of what our community expectations are, and it's how we invite new amenities to our community, or how we acquire them. So I would like to see us at least request their participation in the spirit of this policy. And I'm just wondering what mechanism there is for this. Maybe we can hear from Mr. Borhill if, if we are reaching out and suggesting that they do adhere to the policy, with the understanding that we do know that they're not obliged to, but that the community would appreciate it. Thought?
Mr. Borhill?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff are communicating council's direction on this matter, both to applicants that are part of the council approval process and prospective applications. So I can confirm that those conversations are being had at the staff level.
So we have a commitment that current ones underway will be invited to participate in the spirit that it's intended.
Through His Worship, it's safe to say that staff will ensure that they're made aware of the policy and that it's applied to new applications. I see that our acting manager of development services has turned on her video and maybe would like to add some comment.
Ms. Hernandez?
Hi there, through the chair to Councillor Johnson. Yes, so we have had conversations with the applicant. I guess one of the challenges, the proposed contributions for the development on Veterans Memorial Parkway, it's an increased rate to the existing policy. So the existing policy requires $1,500 for apartment units, but this applicant has provided $2,000 for the units on the west side, and it's offering $2,500 per unit on the east side. And the rationale for the proposal that he put forward to council as part of his application was the significant amount of work that will need to go into the park dedication area, the boardwalk that needs to be constructed, the trails, the environmental fencing, split rail fencing, and the major works that need to be accommodated on the west side of the property. So taking into account the costs that are going to be incurred to prepare that additional park dedication, these are the rates that we negotiated with the applicant, and they are in excess of the current existing policy. We have had a conversation with them as of last Monday when committee received and endorsed in principle these new rates, and we had a conversation with them. But they've been made aware of the new rates, but a lot of the negotiation and a lot of the things that they've proposed thus far, including the rental 10-year securing for the other building, have been under the understanding of the rates that have been predicated from September of 2021 when this came forward.
So I think I got an answer in there somewhere. And I think that the other development that is kind of already underway is the one down at the Souk Road corner. So again, are those builders being invited to participate in this? I mean, there's a difference between saying, yeah, don't worry about it because it doesn't apply to you, versus, hey, this is what council has stipulated. We understand that you're already at first or second reading or what have you, but we would appreciate your participation. So I guess that's my only thought.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks, Yasmin, by the way, thank you.
I don't see any other hands, so I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 6.3, this is paid on-call firefighter program. This is a recommendation from the February 7th committee of the whole meeting. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, second by Councillor Logan. I will just drop hands if there's any discussion. Just a moment. No hands. Is there any discussion? Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you. And I think I see the fire chief online here. Question being, I noticed in the paper today that Sydney's doing something very similar, but I think with not as many people on the night shift. I wonder if we could get a comment on why this Colwood process is more suitable for Colwood than the Sydney one.
Chief, you're muted. But before you speak, I also am going to look at Ms. Lalonde has her hand up. Ms. Lalonde.
Oops. Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make a note that in the recommendation, the wording was, and that this phased department response model be approved. And we would like you to consider to change it to be included instead of be approved.
Okay, we'll circle back to that. I'd like to stick with Councillor Parkinson's question. Chief.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can't speak exactly to what Sydney's model is. I know they have moved to a variation to address medical call response over a full operational response for fires and other emergencies as such. So I'd have to touch base with Chief Mickelson to find out more on that.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi.
I was just going to, Your Worship, I was just going to amend my motion to say included instead of approved. Can't approve something that we have to approve later on. So included, please. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'm going to just assume that Councillor Logan is going to second that amendment as well. So let's vote on the amendment very quickly first, and then I'll come back to the main motion. Is there any in opposition to the amendment? Hearing none, the amendment passes. Bringing us back to the main motion. Is there any other discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Moving on to 6.4, Parks and Rec Master Plan Implementation. This is a recommendation from the February 7th Committee of the Whole meeting. May I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Jansen, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion, excuse me, Councillor Jansen, do you have anything? No. Councillor Baxter?
No.
Do you wish to comment? Okay, Councillor Day?
Thank you. There's been a few letters come in from residents concerned with the late addition of the pickleball courts for Colwood Creek Park. So I just wonder if we could confirm with staff, please, whether or not that is written in stone if we carry this motion, or if that will still be the subject of community input.
Thank you. And as well, in addition to Councillor Day's question, can you, when staff answers that question, can they just confirm that should we be dealing with this now at 6.4, or should we be addressing that question at 6.7? Because I wasn't sure either. Ms. Collington?
Thank you, Your Worship. This item will be addressed at item 6.7 when we speak about the management plans for the Colwood Creek Park, Lookout Lake Park, and Ocean View Park. Additionally, just in reference to the second part of that question, it's the set in stone. This is just the beginning of the review and referral process. So I can further speak to that when we speak with item 6.7 in a few minutes.
Great, thank you. Councillor Day?
No, that's good, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter. Oh, sorry, your hand was up, Councillor Baxter, but maybe it was.
I was seconding.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'll just drop everybody's hands. I don't see any other hands, so I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. That takes us to 6.5, which I'm just making sure. Yep, 6.5. This is a development cost charges for roads. This is a recommendation from the February 7th Committee of the Whole meeting, moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. So I'm reaching. Thank you. Discussion. Councillor Baxter, you wish to comment?
Yes, I do. I intend to be here to see that that 40-year plan is carried out. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope all of council's here in 40 years to see this plan rolled out. So thanks. Councillor Parkinson, do you have anything? He's just yeah, you were the seconder, so I was just checking. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will call to this question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. Moving on to 6.6, this is the tax policy update. This is a recommendation from the February 7th Committee of the Whole meeting. May I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Jansen. Thank you. Discussion? Councillor Baxter, do you wish to discuss?
No.
No, thank you. Councillor Jansen? No, okay. Sorry, unfortunately on my screen, everybody, just so you know, when I hit lower, it drops, it hides everybody for about 10 seconds. So my apologies for the delay. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you.
Your worship.
Sorry, you did oppose, Councillor? Yeah. Okay, sorry, I will go back. Councillor Parkinson has opposed. Is there any, just confirming no one else? No one else opposed, so please just have the record note that Councillor Parkinson has opposed that. Moving on to 6.7, this is Ms. Collington, our senior planner, in regards to the consideration of draft park management plans.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as you know, the city's been working through park management planning processes for Colwood Creek Park, Lookout Lake Park, and Ocean View Park. So phase 1 was through last summer 2021, which focused on analysis and engagement. Phase 2, which was all through the fall, looked at draft direction and development of each park's planning, including visions, goals, and initial conceptual plans, as well as another round of engagement. So now we're in phase 3, which includes the draft plan, review, further consultation, and refinement of the draft plan. So thus, tonight, we're going to introduce you to the draft Colwood Creek Park Management Plan, the draft Lookout Lake Park Management Plan, and the draft Ocean View Park Management Plan. So we're seeking your initial comments and looking for direction to release these draft management plans for external referral process and public input. So if council endorses the draft plans for the purposes of seeking final public and stakeholder feedback, the city will collect comments from the public, stakeholders, and others from now until mid-March. Any input received will guide consideration for edits and finalization of each park's final management plan. So following that process, a summary of responses and the final draft of each park's management plan will be presented for your endorsement. So with me here tonight is Vanessa Walton from Lanark Consultants, who has been working with the city in producing these plans. Vanessa will run through a brief overview of each park's management plan. Vanessa?
Thanks, Jill, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to be joining you again to share an update on the park management plans for Colwood Creek, Ocean View, and Lookout Lake Parks. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody see that okay?
We can see it, yes.
Thank you. So I'll begin with a brief overview of the project process just as a refresher, and then the majority of my presentation will focus on sharing what we've been up to during phase 3, including development of the draft park management plan for each park. And I'll provide highlights from each plan and share some select recommendations. And following that, I'll touch on what's coming up next in phase 3 as we move towards finalizing the plans. So as Jill mentioned, just as a reminder of where we're at in the overall process, this diagram is a timeline that shows the 3 key phases. So phase 1 occurring over the summer, focused on site analysis and ideas exploration. Phase 2 in the fall, which dove into early directions for each of the parks. And phase 3, where we are now, where we've developed drafts for each park and are almost ready to share them with the public and stakeholders following this council update and review. So as a reminder, the purpose of the park management plans is to guide future park infrastructure upgrades, environmental considerations, and recreational use. The plans provide an opportunity to analyze each park's existing conditions, facilities, and amenities, understand park context, ecological, social, and recreational, and engage with community members about the parks, as well as a chance to develop a strong visions and set of guiding principles and recommendations for capital and operational improvements as well as establish a feasible implementation plan. The recommendations developed within each plan are based on several sources of input. So site analysis of each park, a review of background docs, including the OCP and Parks and Recreation Master Plan, ideas from stakeholders and community members gathered through the process, and input received from City Council and staff. Recommendations within each plan are organized into two categories, capital and operational. Capital recommendations being ideas that will require capital investment through municipal funding or other strategies. So an example being integrating a new washroom building. Operational recommendations are ideas for planning initiatives, program development, and management strategies for each park. And each recommendation includes a brief description or statement about the change, background and rationale, so a summary of issues, opportunities, public input and background info, and then planning and design considerations, so key elements to be considered as the recommendation is refined through the detailed design process. We've also provided an action table for each recommendation, which outlines the steps for implementing the change. So each recommendation is broken into separate actions that each have a corresponding timeline. So short term being 0 to 2 years, medium 2 to 5, long term 5 to 10, and ongoing throughout the lifespan of the plan and beyond. We've developed an illustrative concept plan for each park to create a proposed future for the park and locate each of the recommendations. So starting with Colwood Creek Park, there are 13 capital recommendations for consideration, and I'll provide a high-level overview of these and then really just dive into a few in more detail in the interest of everyone's time. So they're organized into 3 categories. Park activities and amenities, which are mostly clustered on the Sunridge Valley Drive side of the park. So these include items like expansion of the playground and splash pad area, addition of a park washroom building and picnic areas, and integration of 2 pickleball courts, as was previously mentioned. The integration of those in this area was to provide proximity to parking, as well as there is an existing flat open space here. And that recommendation really came out of both the PRMP and what we heard from the public as part of phase 2. And I'm happy to kind of answer more questions on that moving forward. Natural areas, we're really looking at restoring and protecting natural areas with a focus on expanding the riparian buffer and managing the park's tree canopy, as well as improving park drainage and stormwater management. And then finally, access, circulation, and parking, improvements to the existing parking area on Sunridge Valley Drive, as well as provision of new off-street parking on Cecil Blogg Drive, upgrades to the park trail network, improvements to park furnishings, lighting, and public art. And then, of course, crossing over kind of between the areas, but we've included in activities and amenities is updates to the dog off-leash area. There are 3 operational recommendations for Colwood Creek Park for programming, development, and management strategies for the park. So these include adding a water service connection at the Cecil Blogg Drive side for maintenance and recreation purposes. Ongoing operations and maintenance considerations. For this park, we've included some specific maintenance concerns we heard from the public in phase 2, like managing the presence of speargrass in the park, and ideas about expanding recreational programming. With a lot of the capital improvements like the washroom building and improvements to lawn areas, we really feel there's an opportunity for the park to kind of support further recreational programming. So things from fitness classes to outdoor concerts and events. The first recommendation I'll provide more information on is the expansion of the playground and splash pad area. So this has been one of the top supported amenities throughout the process, specifically with a focus on integrating more accessible play for a range of ages and abilities. So design considerations include retaining the existing structures that are in good condition now, and then integrating more accessible play features and those for a range of ages, and potentially looking at clustering them for players that are older and those that are in the younger demographic. And then looking to expand the splash pad. This is the existing splash feature now. and then surrounding the whole thing with a narrow pathway loop for strider bikes and early walkers. One of the other key considerations here is that the existing playground is situated quite close to the riparian buffer. So the recommendation actually includes to remove some of the existing lawn area to the south of the play area and renaturalize this zone to expand that buffer, and then really focus expansion to the north with some integration of habitat fencing along the south as well. And then you'll see we've clustered some supporting amenities like the washroom building and picnic areas nearby as well. So another key recommendation is upgrades to the dog off leash area and provision of a dog on leash zone. So we feel that the development of this recommendation sort of strives to provide a balanced approach to addressing the feedback we heard during the public engagement phases, which was both that the off-leash areas are extremely cherished within the park, but then also there are safety concerns about the presence of off-leash dogs, specifically in the playground area. So the Sunridge Valley Drive side of the park would be converted to an on-leash zone with addition of regulatory signage at key park entries and in transition zones, just to kind of highlight the on-leash and off-leash areas. And then that would leave Cecil Bog Drive side as well as the Veteran Memorial Parkway area for off-leash. And improvements to the core kind of off-leash zone would include a small picnic shelter for all seasons use, addition of shade trees, a water connection, which would allow for drinking water for humans and dogs, and kind of a splash area for pups, as well as additional furnishings throughout the area. And another key component being that improved and expanded off-street parking area with all off-leash visitors arriving to Cecil Bog Drive. We feel that's key to accommodating those users. And then we spoke about this a bit last time, but the addition of habitat fencing along the riparian buffer to really address some of the concerns we heard about the presence of off-leash dogs in sensitive habitat zones. So thinking about a more robust solution on the north edge here in this key area where we'd be providing and enhancing the riparian buffer. So that could be similar to this example with a wooden post and rail and an infill panel, and then along the other habitat zones, a more simple post and rail fence. And that provides kind of a good segue into our environmental areas recommendation. So again, public engagement participants identified concerns about the quality of the park's habitat areas, including impacts from human and dog use. So the key move here being to expand the riparian buffer along Colwood Creek on the south side to 30 meters to be consistent with riparian areas protection regulation. And then in partnership with a certified biologist, we're really recommending a sort of more detailed hydrological and ecological review and plan for restoration of Colwood Creek and the associated wetland areas. So this process would include things like a detailed riparian habitat assessment, recommendations for renaturalization of the creek, and detailed restoration actions and prescriptions. So things like plant lists, soil amendments, integration of habitat features. And then of course, we feel there's an opportunity to integrate more educational interpretive signage to kind of provide information about the habitat areas and also help to foster stewardship of these places within the park. And then finally, to accommodate the changes we've mentioned, we are recommending upgrades to the park trail network. So another key feature that's so well loved and used by the community are the trails in Colwood Creek Park. We did hear from the public that there was a desire for additional park furnishings, shade trees along the trails, and consideration for some paved trail areas for those with mobility challenges, and then improvements as well for all seasons use. So we have provided consideration for a fully paved trail loop on the Sunridge Valley Drive side of the park, connecting the parking area to some of these key park amenities. And then trails in the remainder of the park would remain packed gravel, more consistent with the natural areas. Some realignment would be necessary in Cecil Bog Drive side of the park to allow for the environmental restoration zones. And as well, we've provided some changes in areas where there is currently seasonal flooding. We've included consideration to upgrade the footbridges to address seasonal flooding and for longevity. And then again, an opportunity for more park signage along trails and at key entries to support wayfinding and welcome visitors to the park. So moving right on.
I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt you. Just because I think it probably would be better for this council if we talked about we'll focus on Colwood Creek, receive any comments, and then we'll move on to Ocean View, if you don't mind.
That sounds great.
So I will go to council. Council, I can see hands now just through my participation. So if you have any questions in regards to it, specifically just about Colwood Creek, please raise your hands now. I have Councillor Parkinson first, then Councillor Day. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And perhaps like Councillor Day, concerned about the pickleball. Pickleball is kind of a new sport, incredibly popular, but maybe nobody's quite figured out the right way to build it and where to build it and that kind of thing. Very concerned about going out to the public saying, what do you think with a pickleball court location that may only impact a few homes? And most people would think, well, that's better because it's not impacting my home. I really think that we have to step back. I support the idea of pickleball in the park. I know it's a new sport, very popular, but I think we need to not say where does it fit or what's the nicest, but what's actually the optimal location? What causes the minimum disturbance to everybody? It could cause little disturbance to 98% of the people, and the other 2 people it might drive crazy. So we have to be very cautious about where we place it. So I was hoping to make a motion along the lines of that optimum siting for pickleball courts in Colwood Creek Park be developed to minimize impacts to adjacent residents. I think that kind of sums it up for me. I'd like to see it in there somewhere. I just really wanted, I think it's important for those who don't follow pickleball. It's very controversial in the province at this point. The noise is apparently significant, and there seems to be a little bit of squabbling provincially and in various locations between tennis players and pickleball players about who has what rights where. So we have to walk carefully on this one. So
okay. Sorry, Councillor, I guess what I will do is just look to Mr. Earl first. Mr. Earl, are you looking for specific motions, or is this just advice that you're looking from council? And then, because I know we're going back to the public, how Councillor Parkinson has suggested a motion, is that in order? Not that it's not in order, but I didn't mean it that way, but is that what you're looking for?
Thank you, Your Worship. Administration are seeking council's endorsement for us to go back out with this draft for public comment. And so if council was uncomfortable with a particular component of this draft, then amendments at this juncture would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you. So I did hear a motion from Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Parkinson, can you make that motion again for us?
Yes, I kind of sketched it out here. I think this is what I said. That optimum siting for pickleball courts in Colwood Creek Park be developed to minimize impacts to adjacent residents.
Great. Councillor Jansen, your hand's up, so I'm assuming that your Councillor Baxter just put his hand up, so I will say that I have a seconder. Hold on 2 seconds, everybody. I'm just going to Councillor Day, and then Councillor Day's next for speaking. I'm clearing everybody's hands just on this motion, just so that we can discuss it. Is there any discussion about this motion? Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like some feedback from Ms. Collinson or the, I guess, Ms. Walton, that pickleball is very specific and it's really not multi-use. It's a small court. You certainly, I get the use of a tennis court for pickleball, which at least then you could double end it. Can you speak more about the configuration, or have you gotten that detailed in this as of yet?
Through Your Worship. So I can offer first comment and then hand it over to Ms. Walton. So throughout the engagement processes for Colwood Creek Park, we did hear that pickleball was a wanted option at the park. You nailed it with the size configuration. Pickleball is smaller typically than tennis courts and some other larger courts, so it does tuck in nicely into that corner up there. A multi-use sports court tends to expand the footprint of what is needed. And with that, I will turn it over to Vanessa. She's very familiar with the footprints of multi-use courts.
Thank you, Jill. Yeah, so and also just to provide a little bit more history on why pickleball and not a multi-sport court or consideration for other sports. And in phase 1 of the engagement process, we did provide questions about what kind of a sport court, if any, the public would like to see in Colwood Creek Park. And at that time, we didn't receive much support for multi-sport or tennis, and then some support for pickleball, but it was unclear. So that was something we did want to confirm in phase 2. And we did hear actually quite specifically, mostly from pickleballers, with support for integration of pickleball in Colwood Creek Park, and included that in our phase 2 engagement summary. So to some extent, it has been kind of documented to the public that that was well supported. And then in terms of the size you see here, that is a size just sufficient for 2 pickleball courts and surrounding space for kind of seating and gathering. And then just in terms of why we chose this specific location in the park for the plan, things that we typically consider when integrating a sport court in a park are proximity to parking, as well as trail linkages, and then of course impacts to neighbors. And then specifically with this park, impacts to riparian and natural areas, as well as really acknowledging the fact that while it does appear that large portions of the park are still available for off-leash use, we know that this is a very important and key use within this park, and the areas that were previously provided have been reduced through the dog on leash zone, as well as the riparian and natural areas. So hesitancy to place it on the Cecil Blog Drive side of the park. And again, really thinking about the Sunridge Valley Drive side as an area that is kind of clustering amenities for the community park use. We included in the plan some considerations for sound mitigation. So those include strategies like including a barrier along the fence that can act for sound dampening, only allowing use within daylight hours, and then also use of specific rackets. Research has shown that the original wooden racket is noisier than newer models. And then just in thinking about this over the course of the day, other sound dampening strategies that could be potentially implemented would be regrading around the court to provide a bit of a sound buffer, as well as some other peripheral fencing. And the other reason for this location is there are existing trees along the trails in this portion of the park. And of course, we've heard from the public throughout the process that the preservation of those are key. So that's a bit of background info on my end.
Thank you so
Great,
much.
Thank you. Thank you. And I do appreciate the concern that all the council has, and it's interesting because I recall previously, I think it was Ocean View, we had the same sort of fears with the basketball court, and that the neighborhood was worried that there was going to be a lot of noise there too. So it's great that we're following that. We do have a motion. I don't see any other hands, so I am going to call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands to the motion. Nobody opposes. Thank you. Councillor Parkinson, the floor is still yours.
To be honest, Your Worship, I liked everything else, and I like the plan completely. I just think that we have to be very careful of placing the pickleball court. So I'm satisfied that that will happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So my question is with regard to the trees. One of the recommendations of the plan is to increase the number of trees. And I'm not sure if in developing this plan, if the history of the park has been considered. For example, the history of many of the trees that are there is that when the park, or prior to the park being given to the city, the topsoil was removed from the park, and the trees planted more than 20 years ago remain quite small, and in fact had to be augured into the ground with like a post hole auger and soil put in the hole. So in effect, they are like in plant pots in the park, in the hard pan. So I'm just concerned about the long-term viability if the environmental conditions haven't been considered in creating the plan.
Thank you for that comment. It's such an important one. And I think I mentioned in our last meeting, we did work with a certified biologist who did a review of the park. And that was one of the things they confirmed through their review was the removal of that topsoil, which I had heard about anecdotally, but I wasn't certain was the case. So as part of our tree recommendation, we have included consideration for sufficient cubic meters of topsoil to support new tree planting, and that is integrated with the rough cost estimate that's provided as well. And we've also tried to place trees in areas where there has been change to the park or adjacent to other planning projects, with the thought that potentially there could be some regrading and addition of topsoil done more easily alongside those projects. And the other thing we've done, which I think is very key to supporting tree success, I guess, in the park, is the addition of that water connection on the Cecil Blog Drive side of the park. And we've been fairly clear in the plan that any kind of restoration or planting needs to take place following the implementation of that water connection so that we can have a good, robust establishment watering system in place so that we aren't seeing stunted trees again within the park and we kind of get the beautiful shade canopy we're all hoping for.
Right. My last question is in regard to the type of tree. One of the other considerations is that evergreens would be more beneficial to the riparian areas because they don't create the leaf litter that clogs the stream path.
Yeah, that's a really good consideration, and potentially when we can circle back with Aquatex on as well, the biological consultant, and also one that will get clarified. I think we've included kind of exact species considerations as part of the future planning for the riparian zones to provide a chance to kind of check and make sure the species are all working well for various reasons.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. I'm just looking. I don't see any other hands. So this is your last opportunity, Council, on Colwood Creek. Otherwise, we'll move to Ocean View. And I'm not seeing any other hands. So let's move to Ocean View.
Great.
If that's your next line. So I'm hoping that's your next slide.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry, a little awkward skip through there, but we're on to Ocean View now. So moving along to Ocean View Park, there are 10 capital recommendations for consideration. And again, I'll just provide a high-level overview of these and then dive into more detail on just a few. So activity and amenity upgrades include expansion of the playground area and integration of some nature play opportunities, addition of the park picnic shelter and washroom building, upgrades to the sport court area, and then natural areas recommendations being adding pollinator planting areas, protecting and restoring the forested area within the park, and managing the tree canopy, and then integrating an outdoor classroom space. We're also suggesting some access, circulation, and parking improvements. So expansion to parking areas, specifically focusing on Marianne Crescent, and then maintaining and improving the park trail network, and improving park furnishings, lighting, and public art. So again, integration of a playground or playground upgrades, I should say, and nature play opportunities were key planning and design considerations for Ocean View. So considerations we've included as part of the recommendation are retention of the structures that are in good condition, but undertaking a really detailed life cycle analysis to understand when future replacement should take place. And when future replacements warranted, potential integration of timber play structures to really complement the park's natural character, again, kind of reflecting on how the natural areas of the park were so loved by the community during the engagement phase. And expansion of the play area would happen east with more accessible play features. allowing to retain some of the existing 5-bar surfacing that was recently implemented and then just expanding that, but making sure we're finding a balance of including those new play opportunities and really retaining some of those existing lawn spaces for informal recreation. Integration of nature play elements would be kind of focused along this forested edge. And then we've also in the recommendation provided consideration for some smaller elements along the trail network throughout the forest, but we're being really careful to retain all existing trees and limit impacts to habitat areas. And then again, supporting clustering, supporting amenities around the playground, so picnic shelter and washroom building, as well as more furnishings, which was a key consideration we heard from the public, and retaining all existing mature trees on the forest edge and providing a few more throughout to provide shade and screening. Improvements to the sport court were a key planning and design consideration, as this is one of the only city-owned paved basketball courts in the city of Colwood and was identified as kind of a key planning consideration as part of the PRMP. So as we mentioned, public input was mixed on this recommendation. Some respondents supporting conversion to multi-sport, where others were sort of more in favor of minor upgrades. So given that mixed public feedback, our approach has been to phase improvements. So minor upgrades in the short term, with a re-review for potential conversion to multi-sport use in the longer term based on future need and budgets. So short-term improvements being pruning of vegetation that can improve your 3-point shot, provision of furnishings around the court, and some minor repaving and striping, as well as consideration for potentially some integration of public art or murals on the existing paved surface. And then consistently throughout public engagement, we heard how much the natural areas of the park are really cherished. So we've provided 3 capital recommendations for natural areas. Addition of some pollinator planting areas. So this was another key point that came out of the Parks and Rec Master Plan. And we do feel there's an opportunity to kind of expand upon plant diversity within this park. So potentially taking some of the verge lawn zones along Hope Road to integrate some pollinator planting. And then we've also provided a recommendation for preserving all of the forested natural areas, with planning considerations being to conduct an arborist assessment in some of these key zones around amenities. And then removal of invasive species as well. And then I've also included consideration for the outdoor classroom space within an existing cleared area of the park. We kind of see this as a low capital cost amenity that seems to align well with the management plan's vision of celebrating the natural areas, and would also allow, I think, a nice complement to some of the other upgrades and amenities like the washroom building for supporting school and community groups to use the park. So moving right along to, I won't move right along.
I'm going to stop.
Thank
you. You're too keen for us. So I will look to council. Is there any discussion in regards to Ocean View? Just looking for hands. Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is great. I love some of the suggestions, but I love the fact that no real wholesale changes. The placement of the washroom, I don't recall, perhaps one of my counterparts does, but whether or not the sewer heads down Marianne Crescent. I know it's not on the Hope Road side, so I just wonder if there's consideration for a sewer connection when you place that in that current location.
Is there any,
Your Worship?
Yes, please go ahead.
We do recognize that the washroom building will require a large investment, including the sewer connection. So there was 2 locations considered, and essentially one was exactly where it is right now, and the other was adjacent where the C2 is along the other Hope Road edge. So both will require a sewer connection in the future. The initial location for the washroom location was also along the Hope Road edge, exactly where Vanessa's pointer just was a second ago.
Right.
And there was concern from nearby residents as it was fronting essentially their viewscape. So the thought was to then tuck it across to the other edge of the lawn area, still adjacent to the playground, where the primary need and use and demand and want for the washroom was. But yes, sewer connection needed in the future to allow for this to occur.
Sewer connection as in there is no sewer nearby, or there is one on Marianne? I just don't recall the route there.
I believe it's off Marianne. I will have to confirm back in my notes.
It doesn't matter that much, but thanks. This is great. I love it.
Great, thank you. Councillor Parkinson?
Yeah, I too am pretty impressed with this plan. I like it a lot. I guess the only question I have is the outdoor classroom and linking it with school groups, just how close schools are to this. I can't think of any bit in too much proximity. And so just wondering if it'll get much use without schools close by, or if there's schools closer by that would make more sense to have one near it. That's my only comment. And I don't think it's an expensive thing if it doesn't get used very much, but I wonder if there's a better place for it. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Parkinson, are you looking for staff to comment, or was that just your opinion that you wanted to just share?
Well, I do like to share my opinions, as you know. But a comment wouldn't hurt.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Collington?
So through your worship, you're right, there is not, the closest school nearby would be Wishart Elementary, so just down the road, maybe a 10-minute walk away. What this playground and park is very popular with is daycare groups, as well as summer camp groups. So there's quite a few of those. Though the intent of an outdoor classroom often elicits classroom and younger age groups, what they often are also used for is perhaps seniors art classes or knitting circles or those types of things that run the gamut of age demographic as well. So though they're typically called outdoor classrooms, it's not necessarily used just by class age children.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. And I would just add to that we did hear a lot of comment about a desire for more seating opportunities in the forested area of the park, of course, recognizing limiting impacts to the natural areas and planting and existing trees, but that there aren't benches or places where you kind of can just sit and enjoy the forest. So the other thought was that this could just be kind of a passive space for people to do that. And since it is actually already a cleared zone, we would be not impacting the forest from an environmental perspective.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted to share with council that a number of events that I've been involved with have had significant numbers of homeschool groups coming out to participate. And I think that the outdoor classroom area could be used by friends of park groups, could be used by art groups, and I think given that it's in an already cleared spot in the park, I think it's a good amenity. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I think we can move to Lookout Lake.
Excellent. Okay. Moving on to Lookout Lake. So there are 9 capital recommendations for consideration. Park amenity and activity upgrades would include addition of a new park washroom building, new park furnishings, improving accessibility to the water, and looking at providing trail improvements to the existing memorial bench area, with the thought that this area could be used as a place to encourage people to fish from when swimming is happening on the south end of the lake. Natural areas. So restoring natural areas is really a main focus of this plan and woven into most of the recommendations. You may sense that the activity and amenity upgrades are really more limited in Lookout Lake Park, and that's very much in response to what we heard from the public, which is just that they would like to limit change and allow for a focus on preserving the natural areas. So in addition to the preservation of those zones, we're also recommending to undertake just some really minor revegetation along the existing dam slope. So again, it would be pollinator friendly species and those that could really flourish in a drought tolerant environment, wildflowers and things of that nature. Access, circulation, and parking, so improvements to the park trails and stair connections, as well as some integration of park signage. In addition to the capital park improvements, the plan has 3 operational recommendations. Those include ongoing water level and quality monitoring, parking considerations, which I'll touch on in more detail kind of come up here, and operations and maintenance. So to provide an overview of the highlights for Lookout Lake, the first one I'd like to touch on is the park washroom and change room building at C1 here. So there isn't currently a permanent facility in Lookout Lake Park, just the porta potty, but this was a key planning and design consideration identified within the PRMP and was really well supported during both phases of public engagement so far. So we've included provision for 2 accessible washroom stalls, and in any washroom recommendation integrated through the park management plans, all 3. We've provided consideration for single user stalls, and that's really to eliminate the need for gendered queues and create safe spaces for everyone. It also helps easily accommodate families or those with caregivers of different genders. Lookout Lake doesn't have a storm sewer connection for full service washrooms, so we're recommending pit toilet or composting toilet. Composting toilets have actually been started to be integrated more frequently by BC Parks quite successfully. So that's one thing we've recommended. And it's important that the design contribute to the park's natural character. So this example we felt was really kind of relating well to some of the natural materials you would find within the forest. So improvements to park trails and stair connections. The park trails are really well used. The existing trail from Batting Place, is in good condition with the dam upgrades happening recently, but there are some transitions along the west edge here that are really steep as a result of those dam improvements. And then the existing boardwalks in the park are kind of diminishing and warrant replacement quite soon. However, again, public input sort of didn't provide support for too much development to the lake trail. They preferred to keep it kind of quiet and rustic and maintain its current character. So design considerations include, again, regrading those steep connections, replacing the boardwalks, looking at formalizing a trail connection to the north, kind of pending further feasibility and detailed routing. And then continuing to review the condition of both stairs. We do think there's an opportunity to provide a handrail on the south stair in the short term and some minor upgrades. And then looking down the line further out for potential longer term replacement. And then integration of more amenities at the entry. So there isn't any bike parking currently or signage. And then we think there's an opportunity just for some really small scale trail marker signage especially if we're recommending to provide an additional kind of bench or area for people to fish here just to direct park users. And then last, we wanted to touch on parking since this was a key concern and something we spoke about during our last meeting. So the main dedicated parking area for Lookout Lake is within the city of Langford off of Sun Estates, where there are about 7 stalls. And then the only parking within the city of Colwood is on-street parking along Batting Place. Unfortunately, just given that we're on top of Triangle Mountain, there's not really existing open or flat space to consider integrating additional off-street parking in close proximity or like a nice parcel of land for overflow parking. So in terms of strategies for addressing the concerns, we're not recommending to propose on-site parking in Lookout Lake just to preserve the natural areas. And in addition to the vegetation, just the sloped nature would mean there would have to be significant regrading. So strategy being to continue to just encourage park visitors to explore alternative methods of transportation to the park. So consideration for expanding info on the city's website for Lookout Lake to provide information about bus routes, as well as really advertise the hiking route from Havenwood Park, and then provision of end of trip facilities for cyclists or perhaps more realistically e-bikers given the location on top of Triangle Mountain. Oh, I'll go back for discussion of Lookout.
Appreciate that. Is there any hands? While people put up their hands, I don't see any right now, but I'll just make a few comments. First of all, I guess with all 3 of these, I was very excited about the washrooms. I remember 5 years ago, I think it was at council, and we really saw a deficit in that, and it's not a sexy thing to build for cities as bathrooms, but it's something that's so needed, and it adds such value to our community. So I'm very excited about that. The second question I have for you is just in regards to the lake itself. In past, I know the Ministry of Fisheries has put fish in that lake. Have we been in contact with the ministry, and are they supportive of the plans that we're presently building?
So, Your Worship, through this process to date, we have actually engaged with Go Fish BC as one of the stakeholder groups with this, and they are the body that stocks the lake on behalf of the ministry. And so they have been a part of this to date. So via them, yes. And then also because Lookout Lake is a dam, we have referred things to date and will continue to at this next juncture to the this dam inspector responsible for Lookout Lake as well. So various aspects of the province have been involved to date.
Excellent, thank you. And my final question is just in regards to safe paths. Because we're not thinking of providing automobile parking, and this was already addressed by a little bit, but do we have any areas within Lookout Lake Park that if people are riding their e-bike or a bicycle, that they have an opportunity to lock it up, and is there a safe area right now, and or is that part of the plans that's moving forward?
I'll offer initial comment and then turn it over to Vanessa. The short answer is no. There are no bike locks or anything available up there other than the I guess the diamond shaped stop keeping you coming down from Batting Place. There is the split rail fence, again, that is not a formal bike lock, but people do like lean their bikes and such to that, and then the picnic table. But there are no formal proper bike lock things at the lake yet.
Did the consultant want to comment?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Mayor. So the plan currently provides provision for cycle parking at the key park entries, but just in discussing this and kind of reflecting on what Jill said, I think there could be consideration for something more close to the lake access, just for those who are kind of coming to swim, to be able to see their bike and feel good that it's safe, especially with the fact that this walkway is fairly gently graded, and so that would provide opportunity for you to come in with your bike from Batting and park somewhere around the washroom building or picnic tables here.
Thank you. I will go to Councillor Day. Councillor Day.
Thank you. There are trails in Havenwood Park that are cycle friendly. So it could be that there would be bikes coming from that direction. And I know that the preference of all the bike users that I've talked to has always been to keep their bike within view, if at all possible. So I would really like to see that bike structure, if there is going to be one, be somewhere within view of the picnic tables. I'm not particularly concerned if it's towards one side or the other, just that it would be visible from someone visiting the lake. I appreciate the efforts to look at the trails going around the lake, and I just would speak in favor of putting the environment first and the trails second, because we have lots of wonderful trails that link to Lookout Lake, where you can take longer walks and be more active. But the environment at Lookout Lake is particularly beautiful and cherished for being able to see bald eagles fishing in the lake, etc. So I just think it's far more important to keep the environment intact than it is to add the trails around the lake, and that would seem to be in keeping with what the residents have given as their feedback so far in the plan as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know this is a tricky spot for washrooms. It would really break my heart if all we did was put a porta potty down there. I believe that we can be more creative, and I love the idea of the composting toilet. I did see some built-in toilets that Cowichan District had at a park, and they were purpose-built, constructed pit toilets that had easy access for service, and were far easier on the eye than simply a blue porta potty. So I guess that's just a statement. Thanks, Vanessa and Jill.
Thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands, so go ahead. You can bring this to a close, Vanessa.
Thanks, everyone. So moving on to close, following is an overview of the next steps and key timelines for the process. So following this update and review and comment, the draft plans will go to public referral and review one last time, just to catch any final revisions prior to finalizing the plan, which we hope will happen later this winter or early spring, kind of depending on the extent of comments and revisions. So with that, thank you again for your time this evening. It's our continued pleasure to support the park management plan process for the City of Colwood.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Council, we do have a staff recommendation, and that's that Council endorse the draft park management plan for Colwood Creek Park, Lookout Lake Park, and Ocean View Park for the purposes of seeking final public and stakeholder feedback. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Councillor Kobayashi, I'll just confirm any discussion. No. Okay. Councillor Baxter? No. Okay. I'm just going to lower people's hands just a moment. Okay. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you very much, staff. And Vanessa, thank you for the report. Moving on, this is Ms. Russell, our Corporate Communications Manager, regarding community events overview for 2022.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The next item on our agenda is about beach food events. And so I just wanted to also offer an overview of community events for the year so that you can provide input and comment if you'd like to on all of the events we're planning. So as you know, over the past 5 years, the city has offered an increasing number of community events with two main goals in mind. The first being connecting people and offering, welcoming, no-fee events for people to come together, enjoy music, art, food, play, meet each other, and support quality of life in our community. The second goal is to showcase place, to show, get people out in our parks, at our waterfront, historic sites, enjoying them, and building sense of place and pride in Colwood. So, as you know, we offer a series of beach events and music in the park events, as well as holiday events throughout the year. This year, we hope to explore a couple of new events where we look at Indigenous focus, where we involve people in beautification efforts once we have our volunteer management plan in place, focus on our community garden, and just bring it some new focus to some of the features that we have in the city. So, and then I wanted to remind you that we are working on a formal event plan for the city. As Rural Beach and other areas develop and Colwood grows, there's an opportunity to look at the scope and scale of events that we're attracting and offering in the city. And so in coordination with an arts and culture plan and our volunteer plan, we'll be looking at creating a new plan that helps us determine whether we are trying to attract the Olympic Games or rock music festivals, or really just narrow down what it is that the city wants to make its niche type of events. And so that's to come as well. So really this report is just for information and for you to offer any comments you'd like to as we begin to plan our events for the coming season.
Thank you. Yeah, there is no recommendation from the staff or council. This is just for information. So this is discussion opportunities. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just through the mayor, just a quick question, Sandra. So this is all the events, like this includes with the Colwood Arts and Cultural Societies doing too. It's everybody's. Excellent.
That's right. Yes, we've met with them and incorporated the events that they hope to offer this year. They are working on a grant system that they need to get approval for their grants first. So they have just a smaller number of events this year that we'll work together with them on. Yeah.
Okay. Aside from them, is there other people, other committees that we have that have events also? I'm just wondering, is it just yes?
We possibly. So when we release the heritage strategy, we hope that might coordinate with an event in the fall that will be focused sort of on heritage. So we'll be working to incorporate some of the bigger plans that we're working on into our events in that way. And whatever group is helping us with each of those projects, they'll be invited to join us.
Okay, thanks, Sandra. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Days next. Councillor Days.
Thank you. Perhaps just a timing thing, but so far the recommendation from our budget meetings has been that we won't be having the Colwood cleanup this year. And that was just on your list. So I just thought I'd mention that in an effort to be collaborative. And I hope that we can do some engagement with our school groups, because they are doing a lot of events too that I think it would be really wonderful if the community could support the school groups as much as they support us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Just wondering about the status of the arts and culture plan and the volunteer plan.
So the volunteer plan, actually this week, staff will be receiving a presentation from Volunteer Victoria and then completing a survey to talk about their comfort with having volunteers in their work and how it might work and where the opportunities might be. That will be followed by a community survey to assess where the community sees opportunities to work with the city in a volunteer capacity. And we should have a plan by about the end of March.
And the arts and culture plan?
Arts and culture plan is coming from the community planning department and will likely take a little bit longer or it hasn't yet begun to my knowledge. So I'll be working with them as we start to develop our events plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sandra, help me out here. Are we having a marquee summer event this year that we haven't had for the last couple of years?
I do have the Eats and Beats event on the plan. What I'm thinking is that we need to talk more about the scale of that event. In 2019, when we last hosted it, I think we had an attendance of about 8,000 people, which may not be comfortable this year in this context. So it'll be about the hours that we offer it, the number of performances or activities that we offer there, and whether we spread it out a little bit to manage those things. But I hope to, with council approval as we move forward and see how health orders roll out.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, and that was just for information, so I don't need a motion of any sort. So we'll move on to 6.9, which is, again, Ms. Russell, regarding beach food event start and end dates for and the 2022 permit fees. Ms. Russell.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. So yes, specific to beach food events, staff are seeking direction on two aspects, as you mentioned, one being the start and end date for the beach food season, and the second being the vendor permit fee. Historically, beach food events have begun in May and ended in September as a ongoing special event. One of the principles for that was to balance, the use of the lagoon area between vibrant activities and sort of a peaceful sanctuary. And so that still exists in our opinion. We limited this event to the summer season so that, because people would be there whether we were offering food or not. Whereas if we extended it through the fall and winter months, we may be attracting people to an area that would normally be peaceful. So those are some of the considerations for the timing of the event. So council may wish to direct staff to review the timing of the event or sort of set the season at May to September as it has traditionally been. The second aspect is beach food vendor permit fees. So in the last year that we charged fees, 2019, the fee was $300 for each vendor for the whole season to participate. In 2020, we waived the fee due to COVID. And in 2021, it was waived again because there was uncertainty as to whether the event would continue with health orders. And so now in 2022, we're looking to reinstate fees and have done a little review of some other areas and how they charge. I've also spoken to several of the vendors to get a sense of their comfort level with vendor fees. And so in reviewing what the Greater Victoria Harbour Authority charges for a full year at the Causeway, being about $5,500 for a year-round permit, 365 days, it actually only comes out to about $15 a day. We're proposing $600 for the season here at our beach food event, and that would, over about 60 days, come to about $10 a day. So it feels like, considering the amenity and the audience, that may be a fair fee. As I mentioned, the vendors seemed to be comfortable with that as well. So I turn it over to you for discussion of those two aspects and for direction. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Councillor Kobayashi, then Councillor Baxter. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Through you to Sandra again. So at this rate, and I think the number was just over $10,000 you would raise. That would be the revenue you would produce. So does that cover all the costs, and would that cover the bands? Does it cover your time, the public works when they go and pick up all the garbage? Does that, so is there a total cost recovery at that rate, or are we negative, or are we positive? Or if you could answer the question. Thanks, Sandra.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Kobayashi. That doesn't cover the whole cost of the event. Bands are compensated for their time and their skill. And so this amount would possibly cover the event for the musician performances, but not for staff time or for public works time. We do have an event budget existing in the 2021 approved budget for this, and it is proposed again in the 2022 budget. So there would be no additional ask for this.
Okay, could you just remind me how much that was approximately?
The event budget?
Yeah.
For all the events we offer throughout the year, I believe it's in the range of $30,000, but I would have to double check to confirm.
Okay, thanks very much, Sandra.
Councillor Baxter. Oh, Councillor Baxter, please unmute.
I move the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah, it's in it. So looking for, and Councillor Parkinson, you're seconding? Yeah, that's your hand. Okay, I will go for discussion. Councillor Baxter, do you have anything to say? Discussion on your motion?
I would just like to say that I think the $600 is appropriate for this year, but I think we should review it again in time for 2023 to see if we can raise it a bit more to cover more of the costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So one of my pet peeves is always recycling. And when we're dealing with the food trucks, there's probably in total 5 or 6 different things that come out of a food truck, you know, a coffee cup, a water bottle, this or that. And we have garbage cans and people collect the bottles that are you know, worth money. And it just seems to me we should be able to do better. We should be able to give guidance on, you know, if you've bought a hot dog from this place, that your wrapper is garbage and goes in here, or recyclable goes in there. I don't know if that's something that should be tasks to the food truck operators, that, you know, they're the ones that know exactly what goes out their windows. But it just seems to me it's an opportunity lost, that we could be doing better at recycling on these events. And I wonder if you've got any thoughts or suggestions along those lines, Sandra.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. Yes, and I'm recalling too that a couple of years ago, there was a school group that wanted to do a bottle recycling bin at the lagoon. So I've been meaning to touch base with them. COVID sort of interrupted all of that, I suppose. So I will touch base with them on that aspect. But I do like your idea of, you know, plates go here, cups go here, and making it really, really clear for people so that, yeah, to encourage better waste management. and recycling. So I will certainly follow up on that. We have talked a lot about waste management, the lagoon, and the number of garbage receptacles and what they look like, you know, including recycling in them. And so, and we have discussed that as we've looked at street furniture standards as well. So I will refer to those and make an effort to improve upon that this year for this year's event.
So fine. So when I go down there for dinner, I'll know what to do with all my scraps at the end of it.
I
Thank
guarantee it.
Okay, I'll hold you to that.
Thank you. Actually, I'm gonna go off topic a little bit, but I appreciate Councillor Parkinson's question, and so Mr. Earl, can you just comment on just our recycling program in general for the city? Do we have a philosophy? Is that something that will come back to this council? Is this council needs to give direction to staff about starting the recycling? Because right now all we have is Councillor Jansen's garbage cans.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. I think administration will treat this conversation as direction that with respect to events and more broadly with respect to the public realm, that we need to begin programs that lead us towards zero waste.
Great, thank you. I look forward to that. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm writing at the same time here. I think that's a great comments from everyone. I'm pretty much in agreement with everyone's plans. I mean, not every time, I certainly don't want to see events at the lagoon every single day of the year. But I do really appreciate that it's very important, especially for our young families, to have events to look forward to attending. So I do think that's really important, and whether you get there or not isn't even as important as looking forward to going. So I do think that it's really important, and I would like to see us also work towards trying to capture more funding back to the city for the efforts that we make, which are considerable, to put the events on. Thank you.
Thank you. And just, Ms. Russell didn't mention it, but just so that people are aware, BC Ferries did sponsor our music in the park last year, and I think that was to $5,000. So it was quite spectacular that BC Ferries stepped up and did that for us. I have one question for you, Ms. Russell. Can you comment on a mechanism or how council can empower staff when food trucks are not showing up when they're supposed to, or leaving far too early, or finding a better option one day and just not showing up, and then us being in a situation where we have certain categories and now we don't have anybody in that category because that person didn't choose. How I was really hoping, and I'll just comment this to council, I was actually hoping that we would have a deposit in place, say $1,000, that each food truck got back at the end of the season if they attended all of their dates. But I will look to staff for their advice. Ms. Russell?
Thank you. It is a challenge. It is a challenge with this industry, I think. There are oftentimes real challenges and good reasons why they can't make it. Number one, they're driving great big machines that are often, you know, older and retrofitted and funky, and they break down. You know, often I get the call that they're stuck on the highway and won't make it, and I would have a hard time penalizing for that. Second, labor shortages. It's a transitional industry, and I think if they don't have help that day and just couldn't sufficiently serve customers, again, so I guess what I'm saying is there's often a judgment call, and it might put staff in a difficult position to have to judge whether that was a valid reason or not, and whether to penalize or not. But it is certainly something we could explore. There are other instances where, you know, the reason doesn't seem quite as valid, or they openly have had a better offer and are going where their revenue will be stronger. And so I'm willing to explore options if that's council's direction, for sure.
Okay. Thank you. I guess my comments just to council would be that I do receive frustration emails from people who said, we thought this food truck was going to go down there, and we went down there and all that was there was coffee or ice cream, and we went down there for dinner and there was no food, or that people packed up because they ran out of food. So I will leave it to staff. I won't look for any motion this evening, but I did want to have that ability to empower staff if staff had that option that would work. Councillor Day, your hand is still up. Were you looking to comment again?
No, I'm
okay,
good.
great.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. I don't see any other hands, so I will. I'm sorry, Councillor Kobayashi. My apologies.
Thank you very much, Mayor Martin. Just another quickie, Sandra. So do you actually scorecard them? So, watch the performance and then just say you're a bad performer and you don't come. So is that one of the ways that you do that then? Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
So we do have a motion on the table, which was the staff recommendation. So I will call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hand. Nobody opposes. So that will take us to, that takes us to 6.10. Ms. Russell, again, our corporate manager, in regards to GoCo, Colwood Ride Matching App. Ms. Russell.
Thank you. Sorry you have to hear from me so much tonight, but so in May 2020, Council directed staff to proceed with the setup of a GoCo ride sharing app in preparation for when health restrictions eased. Staff have done that. Well, that aligns with Council's strategic goal of enhancing mobility. And so under the banner of Go Colwood, Council has approved a number of transportation initiatives, including sidewalk and cycling plans, transit improvements, traffic calming, and promoting ride sharing and reducing the number of single occupancy vehicles is one of those initiatives. And so the app that we're using is called RideShark, and Colwood's in good company with this app. There's a Go Banff version of this, Go Manitoba, and Colwood has a version called Go Orca. And so it's a proven platform. What it allows is for people to catch a ride with someone going in the same direction. So if you think about all the students going from Colwood to UVic in separate vehicles, or employees of Island Health who are going down to the Jubilee, or the provincial government who are all heading basically to the same place, this is a way for them to easily connect with each other and share a ride if it's something that they would be interested in doing. It also allows users to connect, as cyclists. So someone maybe knows a route, another person maybe would like to ride but doesn't know the route. You can connect with someone to share your ride. And it has other features as well, commuter challenges and things that the city can take advantage of to encourage active transportation use over time. So staff have set up the app. It's available now on Google Play and the iStore. So we are seeking council direction to do a soft launch in March. What we're working on now is some user testing so that we can refine the app and our communications around it and create a sort of an easy 3-step guide to how to use the GoCo app. I'll just mention too, GoCo is sort of an abbreviation of Go Colwood. And the reason for that is that we would like to position Colwood Council as a leader in terms of ride sharing. And so this would invite other municipalities to get on board and use the same app, because obviously people are traveling throughout the region. And that, GoCo is sort of a more generic term, but still we know it's Colwood. And so, so that was the rationale for that name. And so I am seeking council direction to proceed with that soft launch, refine the app further, and then look for to set up a commuter challenge, possibly with school students in the fall, to really promote the app and active transportation in Colwood. So I turn it over to you for questions.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
I'd like to move the recommendation and speak to it if there's a seconder.
Great. Thank you. And Councillor Kobayashi has seconded it, so I'll come back to you, Councillor Baxter. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is a fabulous idea. At this point, we don't know how much it will succeed in promoting ride sharing, but I think it's a low cost and hopefully effective way of getting it started, let's say. And the more it can achieve, the better. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi, did you wish to comment?
Yes, please. I too think it's an outstanding initiative, Sandra, that you came up with. I think it's just wonderful. So the only things that I'm going to caution you on is, the implementation of this right now. I know it's called a soft launch, but the naysayers will always look for holes, right? And so any failures, it's got to have all kinds of caveats, and the communications has to be spot on this one. I don't have to tell you that I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but so my actual question though is there, if we were to get other municipalities aboard, do they give us a discount? Do they do it by population? Like, how do they charge for this right now? It's just a question.
Thank you for the question. They did, the platform developers did say that we could renegotiate should other municipalities get on board throughout the region. So there would be advantages to doing that. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So in the second half of the motion where we talk about student active transportation challenges, will we be working very closely with the school district on this? I mean, presumably we want them pushing it at school as well as just on the software. Okay, thank you.
That would be the plan. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I think this is a great initiative. It may not work for everyone, but the people who find it and who use it will have an option that they didn't have before. So I think that makes it very worthwhile. And I'd love to see us look at doing some sort of participation rewards or bonuses, whether we put on, I don't know what it would be, but a special initiative if they get their whole classroom to share in the app and ride to school, for example, that there's some bonus that gets awarded. So I would like to see us develop some things to help promote our uptake of the app, especially where school kids are involved, because riding to and from school is much safer than a lot of worried parents believe, and it certainly has long-term health benefits. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see other hands, so I'll just do a quick comment on myself. I love this program. I think this program is going to be an excellent program to have for the city, but I am not going to support the motion this evening. And the reason I'm not supporting the motion is I think it's premature. We are still in COVID restrictions, and I would be much more comfortable if this was arriving in, say, 2 more months. I understand it's a soft launch, but the fact of the matter is the public's going to hear about it now. And I just don't think that this is the most appropriate time to start this specific program. I would prefer that the restrictions had ended before we looked at putting something like this in place. But that does not suggest at all that I'm not supportive of this program or think very highly of it, which I do. Councillor Jansen.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Sage commentary. I think clearly participation in this is voluntary, so those with continued concerns or health issues could wait till things ease a bit more. But I do have a question. Are we building this app, Sandra? I can't get the sense here. It says we have a licensing fee. But to me, there's a dramatic difference between sort of building and sustaining our own app versus using a platform that already exists.
Thank you. It is a platform that already exists. It's been customized with our Colwood brand and visual identity components so that it looks unique to us. But it's a fairly standard app that you would see. Staff will not be doing any coding or having to maintain on that level.
Some experience in that, and again, it just takes on a life of its own and is the gift that keeps giving. Now, did I hear right that you say participation from other communities would lessen the impact to our taxpayers? Is that right?
That was my understanding at the outset. In the early conversations, they asked whether other municipalities would be joining the effort. We said that would be a longer term goal. And so there was discussion of pricing based on participation. So I anticipate that's a possibility.
Yeah, it's not a hard sell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry. I have one further question just for Mr. Earl. Perhaps you could answer for me, Mr. Earl. Is our public works staff still driving in rental trucks? Like, are we separating staff still?
Thank you, Your Worship. We still have a number of leased trucks that we're operationally using, and depending on how the budget process goes, we'll be transitioning a few of those into ownership opportunities or owned vehicles. That said, it's my understanding that there's quite a supply chain issue with respect to some of the type of vehicles that we're seeking to acquire.
So I'm sorry, and I asked the question poorly, Mr. Earl. I guess the question to you is, do we have those trucks because of COVID measures?
I would need to defer to Rob Boyle if he's on and could answer that question. I'm unclear as to whether we're continuing to use those vehicles to help us with spatial separation.
Okay. Mr. Boyle, are you on? Or excuse me, yeah, is Mr. Boyle on? Guess he's not. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Looks like it is just myself. Opposes, so that motion passes. Moving on to 611. This is Mr. Borhill regarding the Household Affordability and Prosperity Project. Mr. Borhill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to share my screen here. So I've got a quick presentation of this item. Before you tonight is a staff report that outlines a proposal to partner with the Community Social Planning Council and two or more other local governments to secure a $150,000 grant through the provincially funded Poverty Reduction Planning and Action Program, which is administered by the UBCM. As proposed, the grant would provide 100% funding for a project to study and identify evidence-based solutions to address the lack of affordable housing and housing poverty in Colwood, as well as the Greater Victoria region. This project would be undertaken in 2022 and would incorporate the council requested affordable housing workshop as an early action item. And it would also contribute to the update of the city's attainable housing policy. Staff are proposing that the city leverage expertise in this area possessed by the Community Social Planning Council and undertake a project that applies a regional lens to develop solutions best suited for Colwood as a component of Greater Victoria's housing ecosystem. This approach would build on the successful execution of Colwood's Housing Needs Report project, which was undertaken through a grant-funded partnership of multiple regional municipalities and the CRD. The proposed grant funding would provide 100% of eligible costs, including the city's administration as the lead local government, as well as any additional staff time. Therefore, this proposed initiative would be cost neutral to the city. If a grant application is successful, staff will return to council with a proposed comprehensive project outline and draft memorandum of understanding to guide project management through the Community Social Planning Council. Preliminary discussions at the staff level have been held with representatives of several local municipalities, and council direction is sought to formalize potential partnerships as part of the recommendations before you. Tonight, I am joined by Rachel Buskey, our program coordinator, who contributed to this project so far, and Diana Gibson, executive director of the Community Social Planning Council. All three of us are available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, I'll look for questions first, and then I'll look for a motion. And if I don't have any, Councillor Parkinson, and then Day.
It seems to me that we're getting a little off track. Councillor Baxter introduced the consideration that I thought was a good one to sort of say, what are the housing needs in Colwood? What can we as a council do about them? What should we as a council do about them? And I thought that was an excellent sort of start to think about these things. We had a couple of presentations, I think, at the last council meeting or recently anyway, from the Rent Bank and from the Community Social Planning Council, both excellent organizations. And I think we said, great, keep those in mind when we have our housing sort of workshop. And I'm reluctant to deviate from what I see as a very sensible and well thought out plan to think about what Colwood should do, to sort of jump over to, gee, what should the region do? What can Colwood lead as this thing? Yeah, there's money to cover time, but we've got only so much time, and we seem to have an awful lot for our staff to do. So, to me, my thinking on this one is that we shouldn't pursue this opportunity. It's got some good things to it, but I guess I'm sort of let's stay the course that we've set out. And yeah, there's some shiny objects we could chase over here and over there, but I like the path we're on. I think it's sensible and Colwood specific, and so I'm not going to be supporting this concept. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Day's next. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I guess I'm just wondering, again, similar to Councillor Parkinson, kind of what the difference is between this work with the Social Planning Council and the workshop that we already have made a plan for.
Your Worship.
Yeah, please.
Councillor Day's question. Yes, as presented in the staff report, this is a much more comprehensive approach to the issue. The workshop that was requested by council would be of a less in-depth exercise than what's proposed here. We're really looking to leverage the UBCM grant and the expertise that exists within the Social Planning Council to add value to that exercise that council's asked to have us undertake, and to do it in a way that would actually be less costly than if internal forces were used to execute it.
Thank you. And the other thing that it just sort of niggles at me that the other local governments that might participate are not identified. So I guess to me, it matters if they're near neighbors versus far neighbors in terms of, not that it's hugely different from, say, the peninsula to the West Shore, but the West Shore shares a lot of things. So I guess it would make more sense to be in collaboration with other West Shore municipalities. Is there a reason that you didn't share who might participate?
Thank you for that question, and through the mayor. discussions at this stage are at the staff level. We are loath to make an announcement that's not appropriate at this point, given that municipal councils have not been asked the question. We're really starting with Colwood as the proposed lead municipality in this initiative. The grant program provides up to $150,000 for a regional project, which would involve a minimum of 3 municipalities. That would include the lead municipality as proposed, Colwood. If we were to go alone, the grant would provide up to a maximum of $50,000 funding.
Oh,
sorry.
There you go.
Thank you. Just wondering, do you want comments now, or you want me to hold my comments?
Yeah, if you don't mind holding the comments just till I get a motion, and then I'll come back. Just trying to have questions first, and then we'll circle back. Councillor Baxter, I will come back to you, Councillor Day.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Parkinson, for your kind words about my initiative. But your reaction to this has me confused because it seems to me that you've a few times, and notably recently over the traffic issues, pointed out that in fact what is done in one municipality affects the other neighboring municipalities, and therefore we really should try and tackle these things together. And that applies to multiple things, but I think it applies even more to the housing issue, because clearly if a neighboring municipality does nothing to provide affordable housing and we do everything, then essentially we're providing affordable housing for the neighboring municipality or municipalities. And it ought to be a shared burden. And if we work together, it'll be easier to share the burden and easier to achieve what we need to achieve working together. So I'm hoping that council will support this. I see the housing workshop we've asked for as something that can be organized fairly quickly. And I see this project that we're talking about tonight as something that necessarily will take longer to organize, simply because it involves other municipalities as well. And that always extends the time frame. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter, can I just assume that you're going to, you would move the recommendation?
Absolutely.
Do I have a seconder to that so I can have discussion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Day. We've heard from Councillor Baxter. Sorry, Councillor, I will go back to Councillor Day because she had comments, and then I'll look to the rest of the council.
Sure. So I will be supporting this, and my reasons are I guess slightly complex. I've really looked at this issue over the last 20 years significantly. I helped to formulate plans for Colwood's first affordable housing plans, and looked at Langford's plans, Tofino and Hugh Hewlett's efforts at that time back in 2006 and 2008. And it's by no means clear cut. So it is an issue I think that every municipality is struggling with. When you go to UBCM, there's hardly any communities that aren't talking about this issue. So I do know that it's not easily solved, and there really is the difficulty of when people can't find affordable housing in the municipality they're in, they look everywhere to try to find it, whether it's the municipality next door, or even if they're driving for 45 minutes, sometimes people are doing what they have to do in order to find a place to live. I've looked at 2 different housing needs reports, and it's still been very difficult to bring forward a program that isn't is neither abused nor one person bearing all the weight of everyone's problems within the region. So I think that the UBCM grant is there because they've recognized the difficulty of this. And I think it would be beneficial to Colwood to continue because there has been a lot of work on trying to find that happy medium for affordability, whether it's what housing type you're building or who's looking for housing in your community. Those things are hard to nail. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
I'm sorry, I'm not persuaded by my eloquent colleagues. It still looks to me like an attempt for the tail to wag the dog. Absolutely, there's a regional issue that needs to be looked at and resolved. But even just listening to the comments from council on this thing, everybody's talking and thinking about different issues and what it might be. And I really think that if we want to be responsible about what we should and could do, it's not everything. It can't be everything. We can't be all things to all people. We need to sort of understand, what are Colwood specific issues. Yeah, even recognizing that having expensive housing might force people from outside Colwood to come to Colwood because it's less expensive. I get that, but what are the Colwood specific issues that are sort of within our purview, within our domain, and not tie ourselves to the regional look or what frankly looks to me like a sub-regional look where two or three or four municipalities look at the whole thing, and then what do? They split it up, or do they say, yeah, we participated in the study, but we've decided, this should happen in your community and that should happen in your community. I don't think it's the right way to go about this. Let's understand our own issues and where we are as a community, so that we can participate intelligently with the region when the region's ready to talk about it. But frankly, it doesn't look to me like the region's ready to talk about it. If Colwood is sort of leading the parade on this grant that's about to expire, and maybe some other municipalities will join, it's not to me. Let's stick to looking after what we should understand and know where we're at there before we go down this other path. Sorry, I can't support this.
Councillor Kobayashi.
You stole my thunder. Councillor Parkinson, I do agree with you on the latter part of what you said. I'm having so much difficulty with this because like you said, we can only decide what we can decide within our borders. This whole housing issue is a regional problem, and us subdividing this, and I just don't like where we're going with this one. I'm having a hard time with that. So I echo your sentiment, Councillor Parkinson. So I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Lower your hand. Is anyone else looking to speak this evening? Oh, I'm just going to lower hands. I've lost the ability to lower hands. Okay. I'm not seeing anybody else, so I'll call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Councillor Kobayashi, Councillor Jansen, Councillor Parkinson oppose. The motion passes. Moving on to bylaws. 7.1, this is bylaw number 1917, Colwood Main Sewer LAS Enlargement 3378 Wishart Road. This is for adoption. Again, my apologies, but I've lost the ability to lower hands. Oh, no, now it's back. Okay, so I'm going to lower hands. Sorry, may I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes. Moving on to 7.2, bylaw number 1918, Colwood West Sewer LAS Enlargement for 3378 Wishart Road. This is for adoption. May I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes. Moving on to bylaw number 1919, Colwood Land Use Bylaw number CD22, Zone 3460 and 3461 Veterans Memorial Parkway. This is for first and second reading. May I get a mover and seconder, please? Sorry, hold on. My apologies. I'll stop that. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Logan. Our hands. Discussion. Seeing again, oh, there is discussion. Okay, I will go to, I'm just going to go with the list. Councillor Baxter, it's Baxter, Day, Kobayashi, Parkinson. Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, I'm supporting this for a number of different reasons, but I wanted to address some of the comments that were made. I think a lot of people understand that the current zoning would see the removal of probably every single tree on the site. That's the zoning that exists already and can't be removed. But some people did speak as if it is only this rezoning that would cause those trees to be brought down, and that's simply not the case. If you look at the southern boundary of Havenwood Park, trees were removed right up to the boundary when the townhouses were built there. And indeed, there was blasting almost right up to the boundary. If you look at the western boundary of the park, which is single family, trees removed right up to the boundary there. And you look at most single family subdivisions, and you can tell where the lot lines are because that's where the cut line is. And we were accused of a cross your fingers and hope approach to the rezoning. And I think that's just a lack of understanding of how the entire process works. Giving rezoning does not allow development to proceed. It requires a development permit following that. It requires a building permit. There will probably be a development agreement registered on title before the final rezoning is passed. And there are lots of regulations, including a tree cutting bylaw, which will limit and control what the developer can do. And staff and consultants will monitor what is done to ensure that it is done in accordance with all the regulations. So just going back to tree cutting briefly to finish this off, the concern about the need to possibly, for safety reasons, bring down trees in Havenwood Park. Naturally, that would only be done in consultation with the other holders of the covenant on the park. But in any case, with the proposed rezoning, the cut line where all trees are removed would be further away from the park edge than it would be under the current zoning, and therefore there would be less danger of wind throw inside the park. Just on the question of rental units, I think this site is a questionable value for rental units because it's not really close to good bus service and good services in the sense of commercial and administrative services. And that's why I have supported rental units in the center of Royal Bay, for instance, as well as at the town center, city center at Colwood Corners. That's where a person who can only afford to rent can live most cheaply, because if they need to, they can dispense with a car as means of transportation, because they can walk to a wide variety of stores, and they will be able to in Royal Bay, and there will be good bus service to the center of Royal Bay, as Transit has in their current planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. My question is for staff, and it's in regards to the covenant. When will the covenant issues be addressed?
Hi there, through the chair to Councillor Day's question. So the covenant, we have been in close contact with HAT, and with them, we have read the covenant. The covenant speaks, so the interest of the covenant is Havenwood Park, and we have spoken with them about Area 2. So their concerns are specific to Area 2, which is the portion of Havenwood Park that would be most affected by tree removal. But it is not entirely only because of the development next door, but also because of the deterioration of the trees on that edge of the park. So there's already disease and root rot that is happening on that edge, and you can see it when you walk down that trail, that it is a deteriorating forest on that edge. So those are where the concerns are. The covenant language allows the city of Colwood to do removal of hazardous trees immediate if we need to protect the safety of pedestrians and park users, and then go back to the covenant holders and look for remediations and solutions. And there is a good understanding with HAT, City of Langford, and ourselves that if we are notified of a hazard, we'll have to act to protect the public. This is the development agreement conditions that have been put forward before council have outlined the fact that in the future, the developer will come back with a proposal as to what would the management of that area would look like. And council can decide to say no to that proposal, can say we will like to do no work in that area, and we will address the hazard as they emerge. As we identify trees that need to be removed, the trees will be topped and ideally kept for wildlife purposes if they are stable enough to remain. So the intent is to continue to work with HAT to look for minimal tree removal, the removal of hazardous trees, absolutely, and in accordance to the terms of the covenant. So it is not that we have overlooked the covenant, but at the moment, no development has happened and no disturbance of the park has happened. We can only look to addressing any matters as we further outline whether if the development does proceed, then there's something that we can look to address to minimize. But if the development does not achieve rezoning, there is we're almost putting the cart before the horse. Like at this point, the developer has provided and outlined very clearly the risk, the hazards that could emerge, and they are willing to work with us and the covenant holders to align a management plan, put it back to council, and have council be the ultimate approval, give the ultimate approval for a plan that is suitable for restoration and enhancement.
Thank you. So my comments then are just that I will not be supporting this. And my reasoning is because it's about a lot more than trees. It's about the wildlife that lives there and the increased pressure that is put on it by increased human activities, as well as the loss of habitat in the area. So I have believed since 1999, when I sat on the Greenways Committee that reviewed all of the parks in Colwood and our future desires, that this park, which wasn't yet created in 1999, but was identified, should have been enhanced and augmented by development of the surrounding lands. And I don't believe that this has achieved that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi, I had your hand up, but it looks like it came down. Did you still wish to speak, or should I?
No, the question was asked by Councillor Day, actually, so I wanted to understand the covenant. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson, then Jansen.
Couple of issues here that I'd like to really be crystal clear on. Firstly, the timeline to turn the parks over to the city of Colwood. Again, that my understanding is that the substantial portion of the park and the wetland have been committed to the city for some time. When they start work on the site, presumably something would trigger. So I'd like to understand that. And the other thing I'd like to understand is there a mechanism that we can ensure that development permits, building permits, or occupancy permits won't be issued unless the plans substantially conform to what we're seeing? I mean, what we've seen are underground parking, nice curvilinear buildings, green walls on the buildings. How do we ensure that those actually happen and there isn't a zoning pass that somebody comes along a few years from now and says, here's I'm doing something substantially different? So those are my questions to Yasmin, I assume.
Through the chair to Councillor Parkinson. So the way the development agreement conditions are worded, we have asked for park dedication prior to building permit. So the reason we have asked for the building permit to be the trigger for park dedication is because we would like the developer to complete the works of the boardwalk and the trails and the fencing and all the environmental restoration to take place while the property is private property, and those works and improvements on the area to be dedicated as park are undertaken by them as the property owners. And once all those works are completed, then they get transferred to the city, and that happens prior to a building permit. So we did not want the trigger to be prior to land alteration because we want them to alter the land to complete all the parts works before turning it over to the city. So that the current development agreement condition is park dedication to be achieved prior as a condition prior to building permit. And then the second question was about how or a mechanism to achieve substantial compliance of the development as you have seen it so far. In the past, some development agreements have had the wording added that the development, that the development is in substantial compliance with the drawings presented to council at public hearing. And it could be a full set of package that gets provided to council at the public hearing, and those are the drawings that we would use to hold permits, subsequent permits to.
Thank you for that, and I think the your discussion about transferring the park and building permit sounds good to me, and good for the developer to agree to that. And then just clarify for me the development agreement that might have these clauses, holding their feet to the fire, so to speak, on making sure it conforms to the plans we see. What stage of the process is that? Does that come before final reading of the zoning bylaw, or would that be something that could come afterwards?
Yeah, so the development agreement would be a condition that needs to be, so it would need to be registered prior to adoption of the rezoning. So the between a public hearing and final adoption, there need to be the registration of the development agreement.
Thank you. And good work. That sounds like we're in good hands there, Yasmin, as always. Now we have a letter from Mr. Strongathorn talking about rental here and rental there. And they worry me a little bit. A rental clause for 10 years sounds to me like it's a stratified building, maybe held by one owner for a time, or maybe individual investors owning for some period of time. Frankly, I've seen that play out where investors own suites, rent them out, sometimes to excellent tenants, sometimes to somebody who's prepared to pay a little bit more if you don't look too closely at their qualifications. But typically then an investor's idea is to wait till the market gets really hot and then sell the unit out from somebody who's rented it. And that can cause real problems on renters that what we hear about, running around trying to find somewhere else to rent when the market's at its peak. So it's not necessarily long-term all that beneficial for renters to say, here's a strata unit that you could rent. So I have concerns about that. Again, I think you guys probably understand all those concerns as well. I don't know where we're at on these rental covenants that have been alluded to by Mr. Strongatharm, and how one controls if it's a rental forever versus a rental for a period of time and then sold as individual strata units. Don't know if you have any information on that, Yasmin.
So the way in which, I guess, the way in which our covenant works, it just asks for that minimal assurance that for 10 years it is secured as rental. But you are correct. We don't have the level of, I guess, sophistication that some other municipalities use to do housing agreements or more strict clauses, adding more checks and balances, because we don't have a dedicated housing section of our staff that can actually monitor that housing agreement piece. So what we have done so far in the in-between stage is just ask for that rental to be at least secure for the 10 years, and that at least gives some assurance that there's some diversity in the housing stock, and it allows people to both, like in this case where there's condominiums on the west side and there's rental apartments on the east side, it allows a different income bracket to occupy both sides of this development. So I don't have an answer, perhaps just more to reinforce that that is maybe the flaws of the Section 219 covenant is that all that it gives us is those 10 years secured as rental, and nowadays the buildings do get strata title from the minute they are built with an idea for potential conversion in the future to condominiums.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Jansen.
Yeah, thank you. I think largely it's been answered from the inquiries from Councillor Parkinson, but I do believe that the proponents done a lot of work here, or at least is getting closer, or reading the tea leaves a little bit more. But there's a lot here. But from my understanding, or my read of this, there'll be a Section 219 covenant on the east side only. Is that right?
So they are proposing two different covenants. One would be to prohibit any strata council, like any strata council, both on the west side or the east side, from establishing any bylaw that prevents rentals. You know how there are a lot of condominiums where it says only 10% of the units can be rented. So the developer is proposing that as a way to ensure that there are no roadblocks to potential renting of these units, that a covenant be placed on title prohibiting any strata council from making those bylaws, and that covenant will be placed on both sides. So no strata council can limit rentals. And on the east side, they will add a second covenant that will secure the rental of the units for a minimum of 10 years.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hand. Councillor Parkinson, Councillor Kobayashi, Councillor Day opposes. The motion passes. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Logan, thank you. Any in opposition? Nobody in opposition. Thank you.